Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bold and Beautiful. Today, Sheila and Steffy's fates were revealed, along with Luna's twisted move. As the fates of Sheila Sharp and Steffy Forrester are known, John Finnegan will be left reeling from Luna Nozawa's devious act. Fans will witness the result of armed Luna's confrontation with Steffy at the beach house. Steffy's life should be spared because of Sheila, thus her loved ones will soon be relieved to hear this news. But for Steffy's sake, Sheila has a strong probability of getting shot. When things go out of control, Luna might shoot Grandma Sheila, whether on purpose or by accident. The only question now is whether Sheila will make it out alive. Sheila might be forced to give up everything to save Steffy's life, but she might also be taken to the emergency room with potentially fatal wounds. Finn might be shocked when his birth mother is carried in if Sheila lives long enough to reach the hospital. In any event, when Finn finally receives information about Luna's horrifying move against Steffy and how Sheila stepped in to save her, he will be taken by surprise. After giving Sheila Steffy's location, Taylor Hayes appears ready to dispatch the police to the beach house. Will Bradley Baker, the deputy chief, and his backup arrive in time to apprehend Luna before she runs away? Since Lisa Yamada was still filming at B&B not long ago, we know Luna will endure what is ahead. Baker and his squad of police officers might arrive to put Luna back in the slammer because it sounds like she is headed for a jail cell. Characters like Taylor, Ridge Forrester, Liam Spencer, Hope Logan, and others will learn about Steffy surviving this perilous struggle in addition to Finn. There will be a lot for everyone to take in between Sheila's bravery and Luna's chaos. After Luna's hostage situation, Ms. Dillon will most likely be released, allowing her to return home to her own loved ones and move over this horror. Luna's ambush, Sheila's rescue mission, and Steffy's fate. Finnegan, Steffy Forrester. Sheila Carter Sharp will embark on a rescue mission in the meanwhile. Let's discuss the upcoming events in the CBS soap opera as you continue reading. Nozawa Luna's ambush. Let's start with Luna Nozawa, who coerced Steffy into attending the art school by tricking her with Ms. Dillon. Steffy demands to know what the murderer did with the instructor as soon as she arrives. Steffy will confront Luna's gun as poor Ms. Dillon is gagged and chained in what looks to be a closet. Although Steffy is not going extinct, the actress will shortly be taking maternity leave. Well, let's discuss how to stop Luna. The rescue of Sheila Carter Sharp. Sheila will be appalled when she receives the information from Remy Price. The ex-murderer will do all in her power to alert Steffy. Fans are aware, though, that Steffy and Luna are already at the school. In order to save Kelly Spencer's mother and Hayes Forrester Finnegan, Sheila probably gives Taylor Hayes the truth. Sheila deserves a true redemption long overdue. Kelly was saved from drowning by the woman, but Sheila didn't have to make a sacrifice for it. She simply happened to be in the right place at the right moment. If Sheila takes a bullet for Steffy, will she finally be forgiven by Steffy and John Finnegan? Although Sheila might pass away, our projections point more toward a coma or possibly a hospital stay. Finn will have to save her life once more if he is on duty. Steffy might visit the hospital this time and urge Finn to save his biological mother. Liam Spencer's final days. According to spoilers for the week of July 7th on The Bold and the Beautiful, Liam Spencer may keep getting worse. Grace Buckingham never stops delivering bad news. Liam should therefore spend as much time as possible with his loved ones following Luna's defeat. Will Spencer and Elector Forrester will also receive relief. However, Penelope Poppy Nozawa may find Luna's ending difficult. Her heart will still hurt even if she disowned her daughter. The air inside Steffy Forrester's beach house, usually a sanctuary of ocean breezes and familial warmth, crackled with a suffocating, metallic tension, thick enough to choke on, as Luna Nozawa, her youthful features grotesquely contorted by a maelstrom of desperation, fear, and the terrifying clarity of someone pushed beyond reason, leveled the stolen police pistol with a trembling hand that belied the deadly intent in her eyes, the weapon glinting coldly under the harsh overhead lights like a shard of ice against the familiar, now alien, surroundings. Steffy stood frozen, her back pressed against the cool wall, every instinct screaming fight or flight but paralyzed by the sheer, surreal horror of the situation. This wasn't a corporate rival or a jilted lover, this was Luna, her cousin's girlfriend, someone who had shared meals in this very room, now transformed into a volatile captor fueled by a perceived injustice spiraling catastrophically out of control, the frantic pleas of the terrified Ms. Dillon, bound and gagged nearby, a muffled counterpoint to the deafening silence stretching between the two women, a silence pregnant with impending violence. Just as Luna's finger tightened infinitesimally on the trigger, her resolve hardening into something terrifyingly final, the universe seemed to fracture. The front door, weakened perhaps by prior struggle or simply the force of a desperate will, exploded inward in a shower of splintered wood, and there, silhouetted against the twilight gloom like an avenging fury ripped from a nightmare, stood Sheila Sharp, her eyes wild, scanning the scene with predatory speed, instantly absorbing the tableau of terror. Steffy cornered, Luna armed and poised to kill, the hostage helpless. Time didn't just slow, it shattered. Sheila's primal roar, a guttural sound ripped from the depths of a twisted maternal instinct she barely understood herself, wasn't directed at Luna, but served as a terrifying distraction, a split-second gambit born of pure, unadulterated instinct. No. Steffy. The words tore from her throat, raw and ragged, as she launched herself forward, not towards the gun, but directly into the lethal path between Luna's aim and Steffy's heart, a human shield propelled by a force far more complex than simple heroism, a tangled knot of possessiveness over Finn, a warped recognition of Steffy as the mother of her grandchildren, and perhaps, buried beneath layers of psychosis, a flicker of something resembling redemption she would never articulate. The gunshot, when it came, was a deafening, visceral crack that ripped through the confined space, echoing off the walls like a physical blow. Sheila's body jerked violently, a crimson blossom erupting high on her shoulder, dangerously close to her neck, the impact spinning her around before she crumpled to the floor with a sickening thud, her eyes wide with shock and pain, fixed momentarily on Steffy, who stood frozen in disbelief, the acrid smell of gunpowder instantly replacing the salt air. Chaos erupted. Luna, her face draining of all color, stared in horror at the gun in her hand, then at the fallen Sheila, the reality of what she'd done, whether an accidental discharge triggered by Sheila's sudden entrance or a panicked, intentional pull aimed at the interloper that found the wrong target, crashing down on her with paralyzing force. The weapon clattered from her suddenly nerveless fingers onto the hardwood floor. Steffy, snapping out of her stupor, lunged not towards the gun, but towards Sheila, her nurse's instincts overriding her terror and hatred, pressing her hands desperately against the gushing wound, her voice shaking as she yelled for help, for anyone. Outside, the night erupted with the strobing red and blue lights of multiple police cruisers, their sirens wailing a frantic crescendo, bathing the chaotic scene in an eerie, pulsing glow. Deputy Chief Bradley Baker, leading a heavily armed tactical team courtesy of Taylor Hayes' urgent, life-saving call relaying the beach house location Sheila had desperately sought, breached the shattered doorway seconds later, weapons drawn, shouting commands that sliced through the pandemonium. Freeze! Hands where I can see them. Luna, utterly broken, offered no resistance, collapsing to her knees in silent, shuddering sobs as officers swiftly secured her, cuffing her hands behind her back while others rushed to free the hysterical Ms. Dillon. Paramedics, hot on the heels of the police, surged into the room, their focus immediately zeroing in on Sheila. The scene was horrific. Sheila lay pale and gasping, Steffy kneeling beside her, her own hands slick with blood, her face a mask of frantic determination battling deep-seated revulsion. She was trying to save the woman who had tormented her for years, who had just taken a bullet meant for her. As the paramedics expertly took over, applying pressure bandages and starting 4 lines, loading Sheila onto a stretcher with urgent efficiency, Baker barked questions at Steffy, his gaze flickering between her, the sobbing Luna being led away, and the bound woman being comforted. Steffy's answers were clipped, shell-shocked. Luna, gun. Sheila, she pushed me, she took the bullet. The words felt alien, unbelievable. The news, fragmented and terrifying at first, then coalescing into a narrative of miraculous survival and shocking sacrifice, radiated outwards from the ER waiting room at Los Angeles General like shockwaves. Finn, deep in the sterile rhythm of a late shift, his mind preoccupied with routine charts, felt the world tilt violently when his pager buzzed with an urgent trauma alert, followed seconds later by his phone ringing, Ridge's voice, raw with adrenaline and relief, cutting through the clinical hum. Steffi's okay. She's okay, Finn. But, it's Sheila, she's been shot, they're bringing her in now, she saved Steffy. The conflicting torrent of emotions, overwhelming, dizzying relief that Steffy was alive, crashing headlong into the horrifying, incomprehensible reality that Sheila, the woman who represented his deepest biological conflict, the source of so much pain, was critically injured because she saved his wife, left Finn reeling, literally staggering back against a supply cart, the contents clattering to the floor unnoticed. His professional facade snapped into place almost instantly, the doctor overriding the son, the husband, the man in shock. He was moving towards the trauma bay entrance just as the double doors burst open, paramedics rushing the gurney bearing Sheila Sharp, her face ashen, her breathing labored, an oxygen mask fogging with each shallow gasp, her shoulder heavily bandaged but blood already seeping through. The sight of his biological mother, the infamous Sheila Carter, looking so terrifyingly fragile, wheeled past him towards the bright lights and frantic energy of the trauma room, not as a visitor, not as a threat, but as a critical patient whose life now hung in the balance because she saved Steffy, was the twisted move he couldn't have fathomed, a psychological gut punch that left him breathless. Luna? Sweet, seemingly harmless Luna? Had done this? And Sheila? Sheila had intervened? The cognitive dissonance was staggering. While Finn scrubbed in, his mind a whirlwind of professional focus battling personal turmoil, the wider circle absorbed the impossible news. Taylor Hayes, who had made the crucial call to Baker, collapsed into a chair at Il Giardino, trembling with delayed shock and profound gratitude, her complicated feelings towards Sheila momentarily drowned out by the sheer, undeniable fact, her call, prompted by Sheila's frantic plea for Steffy's location, had brought the police, and Sheila's own inexplicable action had shielded her daughter. The relief that Steffy was physically unharmed was oceanic, washing over Ridge, Liam, Hope, Carter, and all who loved her as they converged on the hospital or exchanged frantic, tearful calls. Ridge, upon finally holding Steffy, felt the terror of the leaked Italian rescue photo resurface and then dissipate in the face of this far closer brush with death, his gratitude towards Sheila a bitter, confusing pill he couldn't yet swallow. Liam and Hope, united in their concern for Steffy, processed the bizarre twist of Sheila as savior with stunned disbelief. The confirmation that Steffy was safe, that Ms. Dillon was freed and receiving support, was the balm they desperately needed. Yet, the fate revealed hung precariously over Sheila. Had Luna's bullet found a fatal path? Was Sheila's apparent sacrifice, accidental or, unthinkably, intentional in that split second, truly the ultimate one? Or was she clinging to life, facing a grueling recovery and the potential for permanent damage? Finn, now working alongside his colleagues in the trauma bay, would soon face the agonizing reality. His skill, his oath as a healer, would be tested on the woman whose very existence was a wound in his life, a woman who might have just given everything to save the woman he loved. Luna's terrifying, twisted move had shattered lives and perceptions in an instant, leaving behind a landscape littered with trauma, profound questions, and the unsettling, undeniable truth that Sheila Sharp, against all odds and reason, had stepped into the line of fire for Steffy Forrester. The repercussions, for Finn grappling with impossible dualities, for Steffy confronting her deepest tormentor as her savior, for Luna facing the abyss of prison, and for Sheila fighting for survival, would reverberate long after the sirens faded and the ER lights dimmed. The carefully constructed facade of normalcy in Los Angeles shattered with terrifying speed, converging on an unlikely battleground, the hushed, echoing halls of the art school. Steffy Forrester Finnegan, propelled by a mix of righteous fury and maternal terror after receiving a cryptic, panicked message seemingly from Ms. Dillon about Hayes, arrived with fire in her eyes. She stormed through the unnervingly quiet building, her calls for the teacher bouncing off empty canvases and silent sculptures, unaware she was walking straight into a meticulously laid trap. Luna Nozawa, her fragile psyche fractured beyond repair by rejection, betrayal, and the crushing weight of her own perceived failures, had orchestrated this nightmare. Using Ms. Dillon's phone, the poor woman now bound, gagged, and trembling in a dark supply closet, her muffled cries unheard, Luna had lured Steffy into her distorted world. Steffy's demand to know what Luna had done with the teacher was met not with words, but with the cold, terrifying gleam of metal catching the fluorescent light. Luna stepped from the shadows, a gun held in a shockingly steady hand, leveled directly at Steffi's heart. The air crackled with lethal tension. Steffi's instinct was to fight, but the primal fear of the weapon trained on her, the knowledge that Hayes and Kelly needed their mother, froze her in place. This wasn't a business rival or a scorned lover, this was a wounded, desperate soul teetering on the edge of an abyss, and Steffy was her chosen target. Across town, a very different kind of desperation was taking hold. Remy Price, his own sources buzzing with unsettling whispers about Luna's erratic behavior and a disturbing fixation on Steffy, managed to piece together fragments of the unfolding catastrophe. Recognizing the imminent, unthinkable danger, he made the only call that might stop it, to Sheila Carter Sharp. The information hit Sheila like a physical blow. Steffy was walking into a trap, likely at gunpoint. Horror, genuine and profound, washed over the woman who had once been Steffi's most sadistic tormentor. The reformed killer, grappling daily with the monstrous weight of her past, saw a chance, perhaps her only chance, to forge a different legacy. She tried frantically to reach Steffi's phone, knowing it was futile even as the dial tone rang out, confirmation that Steffy was already isolated, already facing Luna's weapon. Time was a luxury they didn't possess. Driven by a fierce, unprecedented protective urge, Sheila didn't hesitate. She needed cavalry, and she needed it fast. Taylor Hayes answered her call, the animosity between them momentarily suspended by the sheer, gut-wrenching terror in Sheila's voice as she delivered the stark warning, "Luna's got Steffy at the art school. She has a gun. We have to go now." Taylor, Steffy's mother, felt the world tilt. Her daughter was in mortal peril. Without question, without dwelling on the source of the warning, Taylor became Sheila's unlikely ally in this desperate rescue mission. They raced towards the school, sirens perhaps a distant hope but their own determination the immediate engine, united solely by their love for Steffy and the shared, chilling understanding of what Luna, pushed this far, might be capable of. Back in the art room, the standoff continued. Luna's eyes, wide and unfocused, darted between Steffy and the door, paranoia warring with her twisted resolve. Steffy, drawing on every ounce of Forrester's strength, tried to reason, to connect, to find the vulnerable young woman buried beneath the madness. "Luna, please," Steffy urged, her voice low and steady despite the hammering of her own heart, "put the gun down. Think about Poppy. Think about RJ. This isn't you. This isn't the way." But Luna, trapped in her vortex of pain and perceived betrayal, saw only enemies and abandonment. Steffy's compassion felt like mockery. "You all left me." Luna shrieked, the gun trembling slightly but still aimed true. "Nobody cares. Nobody ever really cared." The sound of frantic footsteps pounding down the corridor shattered the claustrophobic tension of the room. Luna's head snapped towards the door, her expression twisting into panicked fury. "You brought them?" she screamed at Steffy, her finger tightening on the trigger. In that split second of distraction and heightened chaos, the door burst open. Taylor surged in first, her mother's instinct propelling her forward. But it was Sheila who acted with the lightning reflexes born of a lifetime navigating violence. She saw Luna's focus shift, saw the lethal intent solidify in the young woman's eyes as she started to turn the gun back towards Steffy. There was no calculation, no grand plan for redemption in that moment, only pure, instinctive sacrifice. "No!" Sheila roared, launching herself not at Luna, but in front of Steffy. The deafening crack of the gunshot echoed like thunder in the confined space. Sheila jerked violently, a look of stunned impact flashing across her face before she crumpled to the floor, a dark stain rapidly blooming on her chest. Time seemed to freeze. Steffy stared, frozen in shock, at the woman who had just taken a bullet meant for her. Luna, horrified by the consequence of her own action, the gun suddenly feeling like a burning brand, dropped it with a clatter, her face dissolving into utter despair as she sank to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Taylor, momentarily paralyzed by the violence, surged past the collapsed Sheila towards her daughter, pulling Steffy into a crushing embrace, checking her frantically for injuries. The immediate threat was neutralized, replaced by a new horror. Steffy broke free from Taylor, dropping beside Sheila. The sight of her arch-nemesis, the woman she had despised and feared for so long, lying pale and bleeding on the floor for her, was utterly disorienting. "Sheila? Sheila, stay with me," Steffy commanded, applying pressure to the wound, her voice thick with a confusing mix of urgency and disbelief. Paramedics arrived swiftly, loading the critically injured Sheila onto a stretcher. As they rushed her towards the ambulance, Steffy met Taylor's eyes, a silent, profound understanding passing between them. Sheila Carter had just done the unthinkable. News of the ambush and Sheila's sacrifice rocketed through the city, bringing a wave of nauseating relief to the Forrester and Finnegan families, especially Hayes and Kelly, who had narrowly avoided unimaginable loss. Yet, the relief was tempered by the grim reality of Sheila's condition and the complex emotional fallout awaiting them all. At the hospital, Finn, already on duty, was paged to the ER, only to find his biological mother, the woman whose very existence had tormented his wife, bleeding out on his table. The irony was brutal. Steffy arrived moments later, her own clothes still bearing Sheila's blood. Seeing Finn's conflicted face, the surgeon wrestling with the ghost who had just saved his wife's life, Steffy found a wellspring of unexpected clarity. Walking to the edge of the trauma bay, her voice cutting through the medical chaos, she locked eyes with Finn. "Save her," Steffy said, the words clear, firm, and utterly unexpected. "Finn, you have to save her." Her demand wasn't born of forgiveness, not yet, but of a debt acknowledged, a life owed. Finn nodded, the professional overriding the personal, diving into the fight to save the mother he never wanted but who had, in this single, violent act, irrevocably altered their shared history. Meanwhile, the aftermath unfolded elsewhere. Liam Spencer, already reeling under the weight of Grace Buckingham's relentless stream of bad news about his deteriorating health, felt the world grow dimmer. The news of Steffy's ordeal, the sheer proximity of her loss, struck him with visceral force. The relief that she was safe was profound, flooding through him as he held Hope, Kelly, and Will close, cherishing their presence, their warmth, their life. But the reprieve felt fleeting, overshadowed by the specter of his own mortality and the knowledge that Grace would soon return with more results, more uncertainty. For Luna, the immediate consequence was arrest and psychiatric evaluation, her breakdown complete. Poppy Nozawa, despite her public disownment, was found weeping uncontrollably in a quiet corner of the hospital, her maternal heart shattered by the monstrous path her daughter had taken and the tragedy she had wrought. Luna's ending wasn't death, but a descent into a different kind of darkness, leaving a trail of broken lives and agonizing questions in her wake. Sheila's fate hung in the balance, death, a coma, or a painful recovery? Steffy's animosity faced an unprecedented challenge. Finn grappled with operating on the woman who had nearly destroyed his marriage. Liam clung to his family while facing an uncertain future. Luna was removed, but the scars remained. The ambush at the art school wasn't an ending, it was a detonator, exploding the fragile peace and forcing everyone onto uncharted, emotionally treacherous ground where debts of life and blood demanded repayment, and the path to redemption or ruin was terrifyingly unclear.